Welcome, this is Cheating Tales Stories. Tell me where you're watching from. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was living a completely different life behind your back? Sometimes the people closest to us can be the best actors, hiding their true intentions until it's almost too late. What would you do if you found out your partner was only with you for what they thought you could provide? Tell me in the comments below. Call me a fool for believing in fairy tales, but sometimes the truth cuts deeper than any fiction. 3 years ago, I made what seemed like the most romantic decision of my life. When my father passed away and left me his construction empire, worth approximately $47 million, I decided to hide my wealth from the world. I wanted to find someone who would love me for who I was, not what I could buy them. I moved out of the family estate into a modest two-bedroom apartment across town. I drove my father's old pickup truck instead of the Mercedes in the garage. I told everyone, including the woman who would become my wife, that I worked as a project manager for a small construction firm. Technically, it wasn't a lie. I just didn't mention that I owned the entire company. Cassandra was everything I thought I wanted. Beautiful, charming, seemingly content with our simple life together. She worked as a dental hygienist and seemed genuinely happy when I proposed with a modest ring I could afford on my supposed salary. Our wedding was small, intimate, perfect in its simplicity. For 3 years, I maintained this carefully constructed facade. I would leave each morning in my work clothes and pickup truck, spend my days actually running my business empire from the executive offices, then come home covered in construction dust I'd deliberately acquired by visiting job sites. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was working harder to appear poor than most people work to become rich. Cassandra never questioned our financial limitations. When she suggested vacations we couldn't afford, I felt guilty but maintained the act. When she mentioned wanting a bigger apartment, I explained we needed to save more first. She seemed understanding, patient, loving. I told myself I was protecting our relationship, that this small deception was worth it for genuine love. The first crack in my perfect illusion appeared 6 months ago. Cassandra started working late more frequently. She'd come home energized, almost glowing, claiming the dental office was busy with new patients. She bought new clothes, expensive ones, explaining that her boss had given her a raise for excellent performance. I didn't question it. Why would I? I trusted my wife completely. Then came the phone calls she'd take in private, stepping outside or into the bathroom. The text messages that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in months. The sudden interest in working out, in looking her best for the patients at work. Still, I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Successful marriages required trust, and I had no concrete evidence of wrongdoing. Last Tuesday changed everything. I was driving through an upscale neighborhood, returning from a business meeting with potential investors, when I saw Cassandra's car parked outside a luxury apartment complex. My heart stopped. She was supposed to be at work for another 2 hours. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, she emerged from the building with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, well-dressed, driving a BMW that cost more than most people's annual salary. They kissed before getting into separate cars. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. But what happened next was worse. I followed them to an expensive restaurant downtown, staying far enough back to avoid detection. Through the windows, I watched my wife of 3 years laugh and hold hands with this stranger, acting more affectionate with him than she'd been with me in months. I took photos, not for revenge, but because I could barely believe what I was seeing. That evening, Cassandra came home acting completely normal. She kissed my cheek, asked about my day, complained about difficult patients. The performance was flawless, which somehow made it more devastating. I said nothing. Instead, I hired a private investigator. The report arrived 5 days later, and the truth was worse than I'd imagined. The man's name was Vincent Blackwood, a successful investment banker. They'd been seeing each other for 8 months. The expensive clothes, the mysterious raise, the late nights. Vincent had been funding her lifestyle, while she maintained our marriage as a convenient cover. But the investigator uncovered something else. Phone records showing Cassandra regularly complaining to Vincent about being stuck with a poor construction worker, and dreaming about the life they could have together once she figured out how to leave without losing everything in divorce. She was planning to divorce me and take half of everything she thought I had, which she believed was almost nothing. The final insult came when I discovered she'd already consulted a divorce attorney, strategizing how to maximize her settlement from our modest assets. I spent 3 sleepless nights deciding my next move. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, to scream and demand explanations, but a darker part wanted justice, wanted her to understand exactly what she was throwing away. Yesterday morning, I made my decision. I called my attorney and CFO for an emergency meeting. By noon, I'd restructured my entire business empire, making my ownership completely transparent and traceable. I updated my insurance policies, revised my will, and ensured every asset was properly documented under my real name. Then I went home and waited. Cassandra arrived at 6:30, already spinning another lie about overtime at the dental office. I let her finish her story, then said the words that would change everything. I know about Vincent. The color drained from her face instantly. For a moment, she considered denying it. I could see the calculation in her eyes. Then she straightened up, defensive. How long have you known? Does it matter? What matters is what happens next. She crossed her arms, suddenly defiant. Fine. Yes, I've been seeing someone else. Can you blame me? Look at our life. David, look at this apartment, your old truck. The way we have to count pennies for everything. Vincent can give me the life I deserve. The life you deserve. Yes, I'm 28 years old, and I'm beautiful. I shouldn't be worried about grocery budgets, and whether we can afford to replace the washing machine. Vincent understands that. I stood up slowly, walking to the kitchen counter where I'd left the folder my attorney had prepared. Tell me, Cassandra, what do you think you'll get in our divorce? She smiled coldly. Half of everything, which isn't much, but it's better than staying trapped here. I handed her the folder. Open it. Her hands shook slightly as she lifted the cover. Inside were financial statements, property deeds, business valuations, and bank records. Page after page of documents showing assets worth $47 million, all in my name. The silence stretched for nearly a minute as she processed what she was seeing. This can't be real. It's all real. Every number, every property, every business. I own the construction company you thought I worked for. I own the apartment building we live in. I probably own the building where Vincent works, though I'd have to check with my property management team. This can't be real. It's all real. Every number, every property, every business. I own the construction company you thought I worked for. I own the apartment building we live in. I probably own the building where Vincent works, though I'd have to check with my property management team. She sank into the couch, the papers scattered around her. You've been lying to me for 3 years. I've been protecting myself, and apparently, I was right to. But why? Why would you pretend to be poor? Because I wanted someone to love me for who I am, not what I can provide. I wanted to know that if I lost everything tomorrow, my wife would stand by me. Tears started flowing, but I felt nothing. David, I made a mistake. Vincent means nothing. I love you. I've always loved you. You love the idea of my money. 5 minutes ago, you were telling me about the life you deserve, how you shouldn't have to count pennies. Now suddenly you love me again. She was crying harder now, reaching for my hand. Please, we can work through this. I'll end things with Vincent today. We can start over. I stepped back. Cassandra, you were planning to divorce me before you knew about the money. You told your boyfriend I was keeping you trapped in poverty. You've been living a double life for 8 months. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated deception. You've been stealing from our marriage while planning your exit strategy. I gathered the papers and stood up. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. Given that you entered this marriage under false pretenses and committed adultery, my attorney believes we can establish grounds that protect my premarital assets. You'll receive exactly what you thought you'd get. You're half of the construction worker's modest savings. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm simply stopping my subsidy of your betrayal. As I walked toward the door, she called after me desperately. What about Vincent? His company? You said you might own his building. I paused at the door. Interesting question. I'll have my people look into that tomorrow. I left her sitting among the scattered papers that represented everything she'd thrown away. This morning, I learned that Vincent works for Hartwell Investments, which operates out of a building my real estate division purchased 2 years ago. His firm holds the contract for managing several of my smaller business accounts, though he never knew the ultimate owner. Guess who's getting audited for potential conflicts of interest? Sometimes the truth really is stranger than fiction. And sometimes, people show you exactly who they are when they think you can't afford to walk away. I'm not proud of the deception that started this mess, but I'm grateful I learned who Cassandra really was before it was too late. If you found this story as shocking as I still do, hit that subscribe button for more real stories about love, betrayal, and the masks people wear. And remember, the person sleeping next to you might be dreaming of someone else's life.